what I'm going to go through then is a presentation and a demo so that we can set the stage for the demo. Is that okay? So just give me a second to open my presentation. And this is going to be a complicated demo, by the way, because I'm trying to show you a cloud demo. So just stop me when we get to the demo portion if something is not clear. So let me know if you can see my slide deck, and I'm going to start my slideshow from there. Is it visible?
It's visible to me, Mr. Jason. Anyone else? Yep. Okay. Yep.
All right. So Kloudust is essentially, for TekMonks, it's our cloud platform. As TekMonks, we are a middleware company, so we have products that go across the entire middleware stack, from integration to AI to analytics to application service, etc. And in the market, the way we position ourselves, we need to have a cloud platform as well. That's what Kloudust is. We use it for our own SaaS products when we offer the cloud option to the clients to host it. And it is also our hybrid cloud platform going forward. So it is designed to compete with other cloud environments like AWS or Azure, which are really the only two that matter right now. And also it's designed to help smaller hosting providers or cloud providers be able to compete with them. So we'll go through things, what is hybrid cloud and what is Kloudust, concepts, how to sell it, etc. The first thing is that a lot of people think that the cloud battle is over and Azure and AWS have won it. But hybrid cloud is coming around. The question is, what is hybrid cloud? Why will we hear more of it? And whom does it benefit? Right now, Azure and AWS are definitely the cloud leaders, but others are fighting back. And there's lots of reasons for it. Companies like Intel and AMD, they don't want to see the entire private and small data center operators server marketplace collapse because they sell a lot of hardware to companies and also the data center providers. Maybe like Asia Cloud I was talking about, right? It affects you guys in long term. And does any large business ever want to be forever tied into one vendor for the entire hardware software portfolio? That's also a question that we need to ask. And there is a new technical concept emerging called enterprise operating system, which leads the marketing term is hybrid cloud. So in the future, where we are moving, and cloud market for AWS and Azure this year was about I just got the report, $135 billion between these two guys is what the cloud market is. And it's moving towards multi-trillion-dollar market. And essentially just two people are going to take over currently, if nothing changes, the entire future of enterprise computing. Azure and AWS both want enterprises to move to an adopt all approach, which is infrastructure, cloud software, and serverless cloud, essentially locking the enterprise completely into a walled garden from which migration is impossible. So this is their vision, is that initially it was infrastructure, so they were giving VMs, then it moved into cloud services, and now it's moving into cloud applications. The strategy from AWS and Azure is that everything that an enterprise needs to build custom applications, to host them, and operate them is provided by them. And when you code your enterprise application to their services, then the software, the infrastructure, the hosting, the network, everything is on their service, and you can never move out of it or go to anybody else. For example, if you coded your application to Google, let's say Lambda functions on AWS using an RDS database, then that entire application is now hard-coded for AWS, and you can never migrate it to any other cloud. You cannot even go to Azure because those services are not compatible with each other. Similarly, if you coded it for Azure, let's say you coded it in .NET and Microsoft SQL Server service and in Active Directory, then you cannot move to any other cloud because they don't have those services. So businesses never want that, but they need to be educated. IBM is doing it. A bunch of other companies are doing the same thing to say, hey, you don't want to be in this situation. So this is essentially the architecture of modern clouds, which is 100% lock-in for businesses. So hardware, which is the physical servers, on top of that you have virtual machines or containers. On top of that, so this is what the old cloud used to be, but the new cloud, then you have integration software, app servers, database. So this is, for example, if you're on AWS, this would be RDS. If you're on Azure, this would be the SQL Server service that they have. The app server would be .NET or Lambda functions or Beanstalk on AWS, and similarly they have integration softwares. And then On top of that, they build their services, DB services, application services, and then on top of that is the business application. So the AWS cloud platform or the Azure cloud platform, it used to be these two, but now it's this entire stack. And what runs on top of that is the business application. That's why if you look at the news, you see Twitter, for example, just signed a deal with Google to say they will move the entire Twitter to the Google cloud. So now people are talking about moving the application to a cloud because the application is hard coded for that cloud. And this leaves no space in this stack for anybody else. So this is what we call a completely airtight platform. Everything from lowest hardware to the highest services is on the cloud platform. You cannot buy software from anybody else. You cannot do hosting anywhere else. Cloud is your computing platform. That's why it's called the enterprise operating system. Whatever business applications you are writing are coded for their cloud and cannot move anywhere else. So this is where AWS and Azure are going, and lots of businesses are going without realizing it. And if you replace this word with mainframe computer, this is the old mainframe computer that IBM used to sell, which is basically everything is in this platform. Your application runs on top of it. And if, as we all know, once you write your application on top of it, you can never migrate. So mainframe is still sold by IBM because the banks can never move out of it. All their data, all their logic, business logic is coded for it. Similarly, if you write this application, all your data, business logic can only operate on that cloud, and you'll never be able to migrate out of it. So this is where the traditional cloud providers are going, and why Google is, for example, spending billions of dollars trying to become the third cloud provider. But no other company is able to compete with this, because you not only need ability to have hardware in a data center, but you need ability for building a basic cloud infrastructure. But on top of that, you need software, because these guys have a software as well. Amazon is using a lot of open source software as their building software. So for example, RDS is nothing but MySQL database. Azure does not have that problem because Microsoft has all the software themselves, and they just transform their software into the cloud services. And Google is doing both. So Google Cloud Functions, for example, is their own software, but Google's other software could be open source. But at the end of the day, that's where they're going. And this is the platform. So it is a walled garden. So because the infrastructure, software, and software services, everything is inside that walled garden, and you cannot move out. The question is, would anybody want to be in this situation? If you are the CIO of a company, would you really want this to be the stack that you build your application on? Because as a CIO or whatever you are, your power is very limited. And this was just proven this year. There is this application called Palmer, and Palmer was an application that was like Twitter essentially, but for people like Donald Trump. And when Donald Trump got banned from Twitter, the idea was that he was going to move to Palmer. But Palmer had a problem. Their application was built on top of AWS. And Jeff Bezos does not get along with Donald Trump because he tried to fight him. So AWS banned Palmer and said you have to move to a different cloud. And essentially they collapsed. They're still not up because their application was coded for AWS. And when AWS told them we will refuse to host your business application, their entire business collapsed and the company is no longer in operation. So what that proves to any business is that once you code your applications on top of a cloud like this, your CIO or even CEO have no power. Only AWS has the power because all your applications are hard coded for their cloud. You decide you want to reduce your cost, lower your hosting costs, software costs. You don't have any of that power. Your cost will be whatever the AWS decides the cost of their services will be, and you'll have to pay that because you have no choice. And they proved it this year by doing this to Palmer, and there's lots of articles in the news. I can send it to you afterwards if you need it to show to people that how much power these cloud providers have. So that's the point of discussion. These slides were prepared last year before any of this happened. They proves it. So what we are trying to do with Kloudust is that Kloudust is a cloud virtualization platform. So what we are saying is, don't hard code your business application to a cloud. You should code it to an enterprise operating system, which is something like Kloudust, so that you have the freedom to move to different clouds or different services. So our message to the enterprises is that you'll run some of your software in public cloud like AWS or Azure. Some of it will be in-house on your own servers. Maybe some would be pure SaaS like Salesforce. You don't want cloud lock-in. You want to code your applications and your enterprise on top of a cloud virtualization platform so that you can use hosting providers, Asia Cloud is one of those. You can use in-house servers. You can use public clouds like AWS or Azure, but you're not hard-coded for it. So the idea is that cloud should be like public utility companies. If you don't like your current company, you can switch to another one, and not monopolies that lock you in. So this is our architecture of what Kloudust is. So we're saying whether you use on-prem, whether you use AWS, Azure, or your favorite hosting company, Kloudust is a virtualization platform on top of that. On top of Kloudust, you get services like Kloudust Storage, Network Compute. You can run VMs, containers, and you can actually run software services and your database, or you can use open source software, and then your business application. So if your business application is coded on top of a virtualization platform like this, when you decide tomorrow you want to reduce your cost by not using AWS, you can just slide it away, right? And you can use Azure, or you can say, no, looks like Intel and AMD are producing servers with hundreds of cores for just $2,000. Maybe I want my own server. You can do all of that. So this is what the architecture is for Kloudust. We are the only cloud virtualization platform in the market right now. Nobody else is looking at cloud virtualization. And the idea is that we give you an open platform with no cloud lock-in. So we virtualize the cloud itself and fully open, so you can move between clouds or on-prem or whatever you wish. You can retain the basic advantages of fully managed cloud with freedom of pan cloud or multi-cloud strategy. Any questions so far?
No, we could. You can send us the software. The newsletter just now you mentioned.
Oh yeah, I will send that to you for Palmer. This is all over New York Times, etc. So this is where Kloudust comes in. We are very unique in this way. We have three versions of it: the Kloudust VDI and VMs. So this is to fight off Citrix, VMware, etc. Kloudust PaaS Cloud, which is pan cloud VMs. What we call plan cloud, other people call multi-cloud, container storage and network. And then we have an enterprise version that includes our software as well, and serverless applications and open source software. The idea is that you can't compete with AWS, because anybody tries to compete with AWS or Azure, these days they ask a simple question: hey, okay, fine, anybody can give you a virtual machine, but what about services like RDS or a database service? Or what about software? Whose software are you going to buy to put on top of the cloud, etc.? Hey, if you're going to buy Microsoft BizTalk, why would you not just use Azure then? Because buying BizTalk license plus putting it on your personal server is going to cost you more money than just use the Azure cloud. So Kloudust is designed to short circuit those conversations, because TekMonks is an enterprise software company. We can offer the same software that Azure or AWS has. We have 30 different products that compete with them head on. And we have same level of services, serverless applications, but you don't need to lock yourself into that cloud. If you say, no, we want to use open source, fine, you can put that on top of Kloudust and code your applications to that, and then you can pick and choose your cloud providers or servers as you wish. So that's the end of my presentation of what Kloudust is, and I will definitely send you the news stories. Any questions before I go to the demo?
Not for me.
Okay, so demo should not take long, because I'm just going to show you the console and few use cases, probably 10-20 minutes, and then if you have any questions after that, we can discuss. So just give me 1 second so that I can start my demo, and I will show it to you. I'm going to go on mute for a second, okay? All right, I'm going to share my screen again. Just let me know when you can see it. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so over here, this is the there's two sides of Kloudust, and the console right now, to be honest with you, we're still adding some functions to it, but I'll show it to you right now. This is our web console, and on the API side, we have lots more functions. So I'm just going to log in as root for my company, and people can register here new accounts if they want for their companies. This way they can join the cloud using this page. They can register. So right now I already have an account for TekMonks that I'm going to log in with. And the server is, we have a host server registered, but I'll show you how that happens. So let me paste my password here. And then I have a multi-factor code, which I need to look up in my authenticator. So if you just give me 1 second. So it's 558744. So when we do the login, so this gets us into the console, and we have a few options here. Now, there'll be much more options here in the next week or so, but the basic functions are all here. So we can register a host. So if we bought a new box or whatever, we can put the IP and the root passwords here, and Kloudust will essentially take over that physical box and add it to the cloud. It's again, Kloudust is designed to be very easy. So you give us the IP, the root password, and the MD5 host key of that host, and we can register it. So we already have a host that is registered, so I'm not going to do this. But when we do this, the Kloudust actually will take over that entire physical box. It will install the hypervisor on it and all the components that are required. And then that point onwards, the box becomes part of the Kloudust network. So what we can do with this is, if let's say the host is on AWS or Azure or your physical data center, it doesn't matter to Kloudust where it is. We can register across the clouds the host, and you can migrate from host. So you can migrate a container or a VM across the host. So later on, let's say you were getting these from AWS and you want to move away from AWS, you can do that. The new VM essentially allows us to create a new virtual machine, and we can pick what operating system. So right now, this cloud, I've enabled it for Cent, Ubuntu, and Windows. It can be whatever we decide as our images. So this allows us to create a new VM, and I'll create one and I'll show it to you once it's done. The other option that we have is monitoring, and I'll show you the monitoring dashboard afterwards. We have the option to manage our VM, so we can say whatever the VM name is, and then we can do multiple operations on it, start, stop, reboot, etc., auto start, and delete the VM. This is where we have some services coming up. So we have KDS, which stands for RDS. KDS is database service. So you can create new database on any of the registered hosts, and you give it a name and a description and how much cores and memory, and that's all you need to do. Now you have a database for your application. We are adding more APIs here, so we can run Kloudust APIs directly from here, and there's lots of APIs. For example, live migrations, taking snapshots, deleting snapshots, storage, etc., that we can do directly from here, and I'll show you some of these as well. So let's start with something simple. I'm going to create a VM on Kloudust and then try and log into that VM. The host name I'm just going to have to look up because I don't have it in my memory, so just give me 1 second. It's 93.115.29. So this is my physical box, by the way, here. It 93.115.29.66 that I'm going to use. So I'll go here 93.115.29.66. So this is the host name. Let's say I want to create a CentOS VM, so I say CentOS 01, and the VM description I can say CentOS demo VM 01, and I say I want to give it 2 cores maybe, and let's say I want to give it 4 gig of memory, so 4096, and let's say 15 gigs of disk. I will say I need 15 gigs of disk, and I'll say okay. So when I say okay here, the Kloudust will go in, and so you can see the output here. It will take a few minutes for it to create the virtual machine. As you can see, it actually runs an API. So Kloudust, just like AWS or Azure, is an API-driven platform. And when we are inputting stuff here in the console, it's just an input to the API. At the end of the day, it's just an API that runs. So you can see it says VM is created successfully, and it also gives me a console for the VM, so I can then set up my VM if I want. So it says you can VNC to it by using this IP address and this VNC port. So let me just show you. So if I go here and I say, let me start my VNC viewer, then we will see that we have this VM that we can connect to. So let me just open this. So it's just a regular VNC viewer that I'm using, right? VNC. So once it loads up, I will be able to show you by connecting to the VM. The image that I'm using right now for this VM is literally downloaded from the website, CentOS website. It would be waiting for me to install it. We can see that I am going to be connected. So this is my CentOS VM that I just created. It's waiting for me to start the installation. And if I did a continue here, it will take me to the hardware screen where you will see that I have that 15 gig disk that I just selected as my disk. And I can do this and I can say begin installation and it will be done. That's the reason I'm saying begin installation here is because the image that I've selected, that's how it's configured. So anyway, let me disconnect from the viewer, or let me keep the viewer running actually, because the next thing I'm going to do is destroy this VM, and you'll see the viewer will disconnect when we do that. What we are doing with Kloudust is we are adding a host into the cloud network, and then we can start creating virtual machines, etc. on it. So that's the new VM. Monitoring, I'll show you. It takes us to our monitoring console. So let me just log in here. Now already the monitoring that it's set up will show my client VMs as well, but we have this monitoring console built into Kloudust, which is using our own monitoring product that we have. So if I log in here, then we'll be able to see. Now this is going to show some of my client VMs. So I'm not going to go into details of this for confidentiality reasons, but this is the monitoring console, and what I will see is how good the cloud is doing. So right now I'm at 99.98% across of my cloud VMs that we have set up. Fairly decent success rate. We like to see, and it promised 99.19, so we're above that right now. And most of the times when we are seeing these issues, it's mostly because it's a client application issue, not because we had a cloud outage or anything like that. So this is the monitoring console that's included in Kloudust. I do have the capability to manage my VMs. So for example, let's see if I can connect to this VM and maybe shut it off. So you can see I am connected to this VM now. Let's say I want to kill this VM. So I say CentOS 801, which is my VM name, and I can say I want to stop this VM. So it will do the same thing. It will go to the Kloudust API, and then it will do a force stop on that VM. I guess the VM name is different that I'm using, so that's why it failed. But that allows me to do multiple operations on my VM. I also have the capability to create a database. So for example, if I go to my same host that I'm using here, so let's kill this one, which is this one, 93.115.29.66. 93.115.29. It's called KDS 01, and I can say here KDS demo DB, and then I can decide how many cores I want to give my database and how much memory I want to give my database, and that's all I need to do. So this is a service, so I don't need to install anything, etc. If I say okay here, it will actually go in and create that database for me, and I would be able to then connect to this database from my applications and be able to carry out my operations on the database without having to manage that database itself or anything like that. So we can see that it has created it. This database is up, and I can actually find login information for this database by calling an API. So we don't have a UI for that right now, but I can run a Kloudust command. So I can say find KDS login and the KDS name that I just created, KDS01, and I can say OK. And this login essentially will give us the IP address and the root password, etc., that we can put in our application to connect to that database service so that we can start using the database. So it will say right here, it says KDS login is below. So it's given me the IP address, it's given me the port for the database 3306. It's given me the DB root ID and the root password as well, and it says please immediately change the root password for the database. So this is essentially, we created the database on the fly on the cloud, and now an application can directly connect to the database. This is very much exactly what you would have to do if you were, let's say, using the RDS service on AWS. Now we can run a lot of APIs from here. I just ran one right now to find the login for my database. But just to show you, on an API level, we can do a lot of things. We can create snapshots, we can restore snapshots, restarts, list VMs for a host, IP addresses, VNCs, logins, create networks, clone a VM, rename, we can do a migration. So all of these things we have APIs for that somebody can put the command here and be able to do it. We're going to be adding UIs for all of those things here. But right now, the VMs and the containers and the database service is already included in our console. And then we have a help on the rest of the APIs where you can create application servers and all the other cloud functions. And then you have the monitoring dashboard so that you can see what's going on with your cloud infrastructure and what are your availability rates and figure out if you need to do something. So that's my demo for now. Any questions?
Not for me at the moment.
Okay. Jason or anybody else?
Jason, Melvin, any queries?
No.
Okay, so that's really it. If there's no queries, then I showed you a demo of Kloudust. I showed you a presentation on it, and I showed you a database service as well as a VM service. We have the ability to use any custom images. So if as a cloud provider want to provide certain customized images, we can definitely upload them in ISO or QCOW format, and your folks can then instantiate VMs or containers from those images.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
So if let's say we have a existing customer who's on Azure right now, we want to move them down out of the Azure. Is there a migration path?
Yes, there is a migration path. I would, if it is, if it, my question would be, are they using any Azure services, SQL Server services or ADS, Active Directory, or are they just using Azure for VMs?
If it's just for VM, it'll be straightforward.
It's straightforward. VM, we can probably do it in a day or two, just one for one. In fact, as an initial step, we can even bring in their VMs directly from Azure into Kloudust console and then migrate them. But yeah, so that would be straightforward. It wouldn't matter at all. Yeah. But at the end of the day, Kloudust is a platform that's designed so that small players can compete with AWS and Azure, because those guys are moving in a completely different direction with serverless computing, and they're completely moving away from virtual machines. Even they're moving away from Kubernetes, etc. They're just saying, hey, write your code and you can deploy your code directly into our cloud. You don't need to worry about servers or containers or network or anything. Just write it and deploy it. And Kloudust is designed to go head on against these guys one for one. I showed you KDS. RDS is the biggest and most profitable service for Amazon. It's a database service because managing and creating a database is a huge problem for people. That's why we chose KDS as our first service in the Cloud Console, to show that you can easily move to Kloudust. And our API even today is just as rich as any of these guys. So all the functions that they have, we have at our API level as well. So if you want to move clients, or you want to tell clients that, hey, Asia Cloud can provide a cloud service that has all the same features that you would find in AWS or Azure, and plus you don't get lock-in with us, then and the cloud, and hopefully the costs are more reasonable, then you definitely can lead with Kloudust.